Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres-Dwyer, and accompanied by a surprising co-host today. Many of you may have heard his name before. It's Peter Bond from the CPG Guys, all the way from the US. Hi, Peter.
Daniel, hello, and good morning from sunny, fun-filled Boca Raton, Florida. I'm here all week attending the annual Consumer Analyst Group of New York conference, where publicly traded companies have their CEOs parade in front of all these analysts and talk about their strategic direction. So I'm immersing myself in the world of consumer packaged goods brands, but glad to start off the day before the show starts, helping you guest host this episode of the FMCG Guys. And I would be remiss if I didn't, one, congratulate you on your completing your first year of the podcast. Wow, it's hard to believe. You started in January of 2022. And of course, I also want to congratulate you on 3,000 followers. That is phenomenal. And I'd say to the audience, if you're not following the FMCG Guys on LinkedIn, they produce a phenomenal amount of content. It's terrific. You'll learn a lot. You'll be educated. Please, please, please follow the FMCG Guys on LinkedIn. You absolutely should be doing it. But, I think you guys are doing a great job, and I'm just happy to be here with you today.
And I'm very happy to be here with you today as well, Peter. As you speak, I have to kind of remind myself every now and then that I'm actually recording the FMCG Guys and not listening to the CPG Guys, which...
We designed this to be very, very complimentary.
Exactly.
You should be listening to both podcasts. And speaking of cross-pollinating, you're coming to Las Vegas next month. You and I are going to be in person at Shop Talk.
I know. That's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to take I feel like it's going to take a bit to get used to it, but
then I'm coming over to see you in Barcelona for Shop Talk Europe in May. It's like all this interaction, and it's going to be
pollinating from continent to continent, right? So actually, I'm very excited to introduce our guest today. I had to actually look twice to make sure I hadn't done a podcast with him before, because we've had so many conversations over the years that it's great to have him here finally. The topic we're going to talk about is actually how companies in consumer goods are adapting to data and AI, but through a very cloud-based approach. So the guest that we have today is coming from Microsoft. He has an extremely interesting background, which we'll go through in consumer goods and retail. This is Christian von Alten. Hi, Christian. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Daniel. Hi, Peter. Very happy to join you today and to have this conversation. We know indeed each other for a few years already. And so I'm German. I'm based in Switzerland. Grew up in France, so I think I have way more of a European background than Peter has. But very happy on having this conversation. I've been for 3 years in the tech industry, and before that, 20 years working for Nestlé and for Mondelez.
And what are you exactly doing now at Microsoft? What is exactly your role? So the audience gets a bit acquainted with it, since it's not intuitive, if you like, that somebody in consumer goods would end up in Microsoft. But when you explain it will make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And there is a strong connection. So I'm a digital transformation director at Microsoft, and I'm focusing on Nestlé, actually. So Nestlé is a global strategic customer for Microsoft. And my role is to focus on global digital transformation projects with Nestlé. What I'm bringing here is, of course, my understanding of the CPG industry and of Nestlé in particular, on the decision process, on people, on value creation for Nestlé. And that's a very interesting angle, being in the tech industry, not having any IT background, which is very different from most of the people I see around me at Microsoft.
Hey, Christian, welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast.
Thank you.
I'd love to explore. You have a rather fascinating professional journey, and Daniel kind of alluded to that during the introduction. You started in finance, you moved into e-commerce, during your early days at Nestlé. You relocated to Asia. You left Nestlé to join Mondelez. You were at Google for a hot minute. I'd like you to walk us through kind of some of the pivotal points in your professional journey that led you to the role you're now serving at Microsoft.
Sure. Yeah, I did business studies and I joined Nestlé right after I graduated. And I started my career in finance. So I had a major in finance and I studied internal audit, and which for me was a great place to start because, it's basically traveling 12 months a year, discovering all facets of a big company globally. And I moved from there into finance roles for Nestlé. And very quickly, I got interested by, let's say, more the marketing and business side. And I moved over from finance into the marketing side and more precisely into product development. And it was very opportunistic. I joined Nestlé after audit. I went to Nespresso, and Nespresso was a very small company at that time.
That was
we're looking for
probably
people.
Like the launching days, no, of Nespresso? Or...
Yeah, it was not launching, but was still very, very small. So I joined Nespresso was in 97, and Nespresso existed already since something like, I think, 81 or something like that. But it was still a very small business, and they really didn't have innovation strategy at that time. They had like the same square metal machines from the beginning, and there was an opportunity to start developing new types of machines and new types of products, and that was super exciting for me. And obviously, there was a big cost element to it, where my finance background helped, and also my German background, because at that time all the Nespresso machines were manufactured in the Swiss German parts. So, and it was still kind of a startup in Nestlé. And the good thing in startups is that it's much easier to move from one role and from one place to another. And I continued doing that, just being very interested on discovering new areas. And I stayed in marketing and moved from product development into CRM, which was also early stage. Because Nespresso were just launching into e-commerce, was very new in early 2000, and collecting a lot of digital data. And it was about, finding out how we're going to drive value with all those consumer data, how we're going to improve the service, how we're going to be more relevant to consumers. So that was a very exciting journey. And I continued building on that. This was the early stages of CRM. And I worked on CRM for Nestlé globally for a while, before looking after marketing for Dolce Gusto. And we created Dolce Gusto. So I was in the team that we created Dolce Gusto from the beginning.
By the way, Dolce Gusto after the Nespresso capsules is like the second standard. I don't know if that's like that in the US as well, Peter. But
US, Dolce Gusto is not very present in the US, unfortunately. I think they never really made it there. But
well,
it's a big brand in Europe.
I know that Nespresso's second generation, the Vertuo, is actually starting to gain a lot of traction. I know that because I had another company that is in an adjacent category come to me and say, we want to use them. We want to find shoppers who have bought their products and ask them questions to help us prepare for their launch. So I know that it is the success that they had in where they are launching the next generation is resonating within the competitive set.
Yeah. And actually that's very interesting because Vertuo is the system of Nespresso to make bigger cups of coffee, right? Nespresso started in a small European type of coffee drinking habits, which is the small espresso cups.
Well, those Americans, they love big things.
Exactly. And Dolce Gusto was going down exactly this route, and it didn't work in the US. And I'm super glad to see that Vertuo, that is a similar proposition for Nespresso, is actually such a success. And I heard it, so that's really nice. So I moved to Dolce Gusto. We did a lot of e-commerce. We did a lot of digital because then, we were 2007 at that time. So digital had got a lot of traction. And And all the experience I gathered there on e-commerce brought me to a new role in Mondelez, where I was in charge of e-commerce for Europe across all the brands. So I shifted from finance to marketing to e-commerce, and then from e-commerce to technology when Google was launching Google Shopping, which was not exactly the Amazon compete, but probably, an answer of Google on how to drive search for shopping on Google rather than on Amazon. And they were looking for people helping to put together global partnerships. And I joined that team, and it was a very exciting time. Before Microsoft offered me to leverage my Nestlé experience and join Microsoft as a digital transformation director for Nestlé.
Yeah, no, I think it's super interesting. Like, if I reflect back on this journey, you can see like, yeah, you have the finance background and so on, but going more specifically into the e-commerce side, you've done direct to consumer, you've done also, let's say, key account management for online retailers at Mondelez, and then you've gone more like to the commerce side at Google, and now more like to the solution side at Microsoft. So you've really seen it from many angles. And now specifically that you're working at Microsoft, how are you what type of projects specifically do you do with Nestlé, which I know is your main client? Like, what areas does Microsoft help Nestlé with? I'm sure it's not with Word and PowerPoint.
As well, Office is still an important part, but it's not our main business anymore. It's still employee experience is still a bit part of the business with Teams as well, and the Office suite. But no, the main thing we've been driving with Nestlé is the cloud journey. So it's the entire journey to cloud, how Nestlé has been closing their global data centers and moving all the data and applications they had to the Azure cloud, to a Microsoft cloud. And this is was a very long journey, was a 2-3 year journey that is coming to an end. And I think now we're reaching a very interesting point where Nestlé has, like a lot of CPGs, have migrated a lot of data to the cloud. And the big question now is, how do you drive value out of it, right? How do you make your business more efficient? How do you create new growth opportunity? And how do you actually transform your business processes, leveraging the fact that you have access to so much data, and you can have access real time, and data just proliferates. You have more and more data year on year. I think I read a few articles saying that, the availability of data is just exponential. What we're creating in 1 month now is probably what we created in multiple years before. And that's changing the way we run business and the way we run business processes in a big company.
Great. So, Christian, you jumped out with the word cloud. It's a single word. It sounds very nice. We think we're sitting there on the beach. We look up, there's a lovely cloud. But, it has so many complex operations. From the outside, I liken it to looking at an iceberg, right? And not understanding what is really below the waterline. So how should our audience be thinking about the cloud in terms of the needs of companies competing in today's omni-channel world of commerce?
The cloud is a massive change in the way big companies run IT, right? Before that, buying hardware, running data centers, taking care of security, of networking, and so on, was a very large part of the IT job in a big company like Nestlé. So all this work has been externalized to big hyperscaler, as we call them, or cloud companies like Microsoft. And what Microsoft does is we are running enormous data centers that they're shared by the world companies, right? And all the companies are running on the same data centers. They're always running on the latest hardware, on the best possible networking, and on the highest level of security. But what is really changing for them is that they suddenly have all the data in one place, available from all over the world at any point in time and real time. And this is a real game changer, because it means that at any point in time, you have access to analytics, to reporting, you know how your business is doing in real time. You are able to take decisions, factual decisions and data-driven decisions a lot more than before. And that calls to a big transformation in the way those companies work, on saying it's not anymore just relying on, on gut feeling, on instincts, but you certainly have to run on facts and and that's creating efficiency. And is making a lot of jobs, I would say, even more interesting, because you spend way less time on analyzing, on making reports, and you spend more time on taking decisions, on getting the notification, on getting the understanding right at the tip of your finger, and just taking the right decision based on the expertise and on your business knowledge.
Yeah, and then there's the whole episode on how to interpret that data, right? And what data to select and so on.
Yeah, Daniel, yeah. I hear Christian telling us that the days of having an external hard drive and carrying around CD-ROMs to install software are long gone.
No, forget it. You won't see that anymore. You won't see that anymore. You're not buying software anymore. You're renting it, basically. So you're paying an annual fee, and you have multiple companies running software for you, making sure you always have the best possible software, and you're up to date, and you have the latest technology at your fingertip. And that's actually quite interesting, because it means the differentiation between the big companies is not anymore on having the best software and having the latest software, but it's more about how do you create value and how do you use those tools in the most efficient way, and also make sense of the just enormous amount of data you're having today.
Yeah, I have to imagine, Christian, that for a company like Nestlé, the value proposition of, to your point, renting software is you treat it like a product. You are constantly innovating and improving it. If they try to build something internally and use their IT department, they don't create a product. Their IT department, more often than not, treats it like a project. And once that project is done, their involvement in trying to create the next generation, the best one, unless it's part of the plan and it's part of the budget, nothing happens. Whereas they know that you are that is part of your go-to-market strategy. And so when they rent it, it's got to be something where they don't have to worry about having the latest. That's what your product is all about.
Yes. No, that's totally right. And it is not so much anymore on making sure you have the latest and greatest, but it's really how do you architect all of this? How do you put software together? How do you make sure you have consistency in the way you're building your entire landscape, and you're not breaking your processes, and you have data that make sense and not duplicate, that connect, and that create value in the end. And that kind of feed into your processes. It's not and it's not trivial. So I think IT still has probably even more strategic role than before, because IT is really driving business now. It's driving business transformation and processes, and the link between business teams and IT has become extremely strong, because technology has become the main tool to empower business objectives.
Yeah. It's not just like an enabler, no, it's an accelerator, as they sometimes say in these conjunctions. What about like all this data that we have? What type of implications will it have on AI, which is a very a la mode expression right now, but I think it can be very relevant, no?
AI has a strong influence across the company on absolutely everything. And already, if you talk of data and reporting, we used to have a database somewhere to configure our reports, and then look at the huge tables, and someone who has some experience in those tables would say, hey, here number changed, let's do something. I think those days are gone. Today, you have AI that is looking at your data and will flag notifications for you, will say, hey, Daniel, be careful here. You have something that changed. Take a decision about this. So your time will not be spent anymore at reading tons of tables and trying to find the one number that you should be focusing on. No, system will do that for you. And your role is about taking the right business decision based on that. So it's freeing up a lot of time that was maybe not extremely efficiently spent on more value-added time on decision-making, on using your expertise, and so on. And AI can have very strong implication in a lot of places. For example, we see AI being more and more used in big manufacturing companies in the manufacturing space. So you have the age of IoT, Internet of Things, right? Where you can connect anything and gather data of anything. So imagine a factory where every piece of equipment is constantly sending the data to the cloud saying, oh, right now the temperature is so much, the pressure is so much, and the quality of a product coming out is this. And you can have AI just calculating for you on saying, and looking at all the parameters that no human would be able to look, when you have 100 parameters, it could look at it in real time and tell you right now and saying, oh, be careful, you have pressure on this pipe. There's not the right level. You have a risk of your quality not being optimal. So, and you would just have to take some measure or some action. So AI in manufacturing is huge. But you have AI in finance, for example. Today, the planning process for a company like Nestlé is huge, right? If you want to start forecasting what you're going to sell and then have your production planning and have your supply chain logistics planning and so on. Most of it can be done by AI. So AI will look at past data. They can build the entire plan for you. And then your role is simply to say, okay, hold on. AI is building my plan based on the past, but now I have something exceptional happening. I have a fair coming up. I have supply problems. Things are not going to be able to procure anymore. And you just do adjustments. But the very hard work that is occupying thousands of people with not extremely useful tasks can be taken over by AI and have those people focusing on way more added value tasks and creating efficiency.
Yeah, which will be interesting to see the reshuffle of all these jobs that will AI will kill them, obviously. What will they belong? What will they become? Because history shows us that every job that we thought, all these jobs that have been lost because of advances in technology, people end up doing other things, right? So,
yeah, I think that's a debate that that we have almost at every single stage in humanity. Every time you have a big improvement or big efficiency gain, even at the beginning of the industrial age, when factories were coming, people are saying, "Oh, now we have the factories. What are all the people doing?" And in fact, this kind of scenario never really happened because the efficiency gains you're creating simply create new jobs, create new opportunities, and create different ways of doing that over the time tend to be more and more interesting. So simply it makes the work you are doing more interesting, more added value. And yeah, and frankly, I think it makes the day of a lot of people more interesting nowadays. So,
yeah. So Christian, I think about first-party, third-party data, clean rooms, privacy concerns. These are all concepts that are centered around helping companies make better decisions about investments against marketing, manufacturing, finance, supply chain, you name it, right? So how do you think about helping companies like Nestlé adapt to the rapid change in data availability and requirements to keep these capabilities best in class? What is it that you are centered around enabling your key client Nestlé to succeed in this world of rapidly changing and availability of data?
Yeah, I think it is very easy to get lost in data, and to just just accumulate data and not creating a lot of value out of it. So what we try to do and what we're doing with big customers like Nestlé and all of our customers is we start from the business objective on saying, what is it that you actually want to achieve? And I think it's very important to start there, on saying, what is the value you're trying to create? And it's based on the value you're trying to create in different streams that you're going to derive your data strategy. But the biggest mistake is to start the other way, on saying, let's gather all this data, and if we have a lot of data, we're going to drive some value. This never happens. It never works, and it becomes extremely efficient, and you end up having a lot of people probably wasting their time and also generating a lot of cost on maintaining data that you don't really need. And today, data is kind of the new gold, like you read very often, but it is about having the right data that enables you to generate value. It is not about having as much data as possible, I would say.
Yeah, like I remember we talked about, Christian, as another instance about that you need to update like 25% of your database every X time, right? For instance.
Yeah. And that's still true. People, if you talk about consumer databases, people move, people have children move out, or they get divorced, they get married. You have a lot of things happening. And on average, about 25% of data expire every year.
Every year.
The big problem is, how do you keep them up to date? And I think there are several answers to that. First of all, you don't necessarily need as much data as before, because a lot of your interaction gets more and more real time. So it's not that you interact on data, it's that you collect data and then you personalize that's how it used to be 10 years ago, right? You used to have your database where you collect as much as possible through promotions and so on. You build your segments of consumers, and then you derive your 3-4 mailing campaigns a year. But nowadays, you have the ability of reacting almost real time, thanks to AI, thanks to chatbots, thanks to a lot of the intelligence that is built into the systems. So you don't necessarily need to know everything about the consumers. You can learn it on the fly, react immediately, and next time you interact with the consumer, you make sure you update your data and you get the information, and you're able to use it right away. So you're able to personalize what the chatbot is going to say to a question on the website based on the data that you just received. And you are able to update your promotion or push another product just based on the question you're asking straight away. You're asking or based on what the consumer is asking you on the website or on any touch point you're having, actually.
Yeah. What about, I know we talked about it the other day, Christian, as well. I thought it was quite funny that you said, well, in FMCG, there's actually a lot of uses of AI through data that are happening right now that you wouldn't expect. I don't know if you can mention a couple of examples that could be funny.
Of use of interesting AI and we've been trying a lot of things. With a drinks company, we had AI kind of suggesting which would be a new whiskey flavor, and developing the flavor based on what they heard from consumers and based on sales on the different ranges. So that's quite interesting. And we also had other things we've been doing with big FMCG companies, which is analyzing social media and analyzing what's happening on the web. And this enabled brands to actually see, and this was for a spirit brand, so alcohols, they could see in the different bars in the region if they were serving the brand or serving another brand, and they could see the visibility of the different brands just by having AI looking through social media and analyzing what you can find publicly on different points of sales.
It's interesting that the use of AI in spirits, right? Now I understand why sometimes when I drink, I feel like I have an artificial intelligence.
Yeah. So the use of AI, and I think it is still evolving dramatically. I mean, if you look now what's happening with ChatGPT and with conversational AI, it is changing perspectives a lot again. I mean, as a marketeer, my dream was always, personalization. How do you completely personalize the relation to a customer? Well, with the technology we had in the past 10 years, it was not possible. You say you're actually personalizing your communication to consumers, but actually you're not. You're segmenting your communication. You personalizing one to several or one to many, and you say, okay, segment A, I'm sending this offer and this message, segment B, this offer. But it was not real personalization. Now imagine with extremely intelligent chatbots and so on, you could have machine talking to a human and having a real conversation. And there you have real one-to-one conversation, which you can afford certainly as a FMCG company. I mean, you could not have someone sitting there and having a one-to-one conversation with a customer when you're selling a, €1 chocolate bar.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make any economical sense. But you can have AI doing that for you. If you nourish it, if you're able to build up the right knowledge and to customize AI to some extent to your company, it opens a whole new field of possibilities.
Daniel, I wonder if our audience would be surprised to learn that all of our questions today for Christian were developed through ChatGPT. No, I'm just kidding.
Which they weren't, but I've actually done some posts on LinkedIn that have been written by ChatGPT. I was very skeptical at the beginning, and I'm quite impressed.
Have you tried it? I've tried it. I've tried it even on the personal side, and it's quite impressive. I can ask ChatGPT to build a marketing plan for you, or actually ask ChatGPT to say, hey, how can I schedule a nice vacation in Vietnam for a week? And it's amazing. The response you get gives you a full vacation plan. I followed a lot of the recommendations, so
that is fascinating. Hey, Christian, I want to look a little future forward. Looking at your professional responsibilities and thinking about data and AI, what are some of what you would consider to be the most important predictions you would share around how data and AI are going to have a material impact upon physical and digital retail?
I think, physical retail is not going to go away anytime soon. It is simply the main way of buying products because you have the physical interaction, because you have the immediacy of the buying. A lot of things, when you want to buy them, you want to buy them now. You don't want to wait for even 2-3 hours to get them at home. And also, it doesn't always make economical sense, right? When you're buying something for a limited value, shipping it is not necessarily the right way to go. So physical retail has a very strong purpose and will always remain, I think, one of the main channels for sales. But what we're seeing more and more is a blending of the channels. So it's actually the physical retail going more and more digital and being more an experience shop. So where also data is going to impact the way you're going to experience the shop. So I think, let's see how privacy policy go and GDPR and so on. But I could well imagine in some years, that you enter a shop and before you even say something, the shop really knows it's you, and you could have information changing on the shelf when you go in front and saying, hey, Peter, you bought this last time, this one is slightly different. You should try it. And I think you would like it because you already liked something before. Or, hey, we noticed you're planning your travel. Why not look at this particular piece of information or particular book or particular whatever. And it sounds scary, but I think data are just becoming so interconnected at every point in time. It is very, when we say a big company is collecting data, they just have to collect a fraction of it because the possibility to enrich the data and just to know everything about everyone globally has become incredibly powerful.
I think when you talk about the importance of physical retail, particularly as I see the growth of retail media platforms, I mean, every retailer wants to be in it. And there's a good reason. It's much higher margin than their current operating environment. But physical retail is kind of the area where they haven't built out the capabilities the way they have on the digital storefront or even offsite. So I sit there and I think exactly what you're saying, which is if I can build a network in physical retail of digital engagement tools where I can use the data of purchasing behavior, and I can know Daniel, he's very subject to coupon offers. So as he stands in front of that end cap display with the product, I'm going to push a digital coupon to his mobile app, knowing that he's standing in front of it. Christian, he doesn't ever clip coupons, but he likes deals. So just sending him a flash notice that says, hey, this item's on sale this week, that'll move him. And then I'm standing in front of it. I'm not subject to either, but I make decisions based upon experience, and sending me a video showing me how that food product is used in a recipe will move me. That is the goal of personalization, data, and AI from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I'm fully with you, and I think it will become more and more precise. It's not only when you stand in front of a shop, but even when you stand in front of a particular shelf. You will soon be able to detect that you're standing in front of that shelf, and that shelf will tell you, say, hey, because you're such a good customer, you can actually have a promotion here. Or you can have a deal here, or you can be the first one to experience a new flavor. Just ask our shop tenant, and he will give you the flavors just for some particular customers. So this will happen, but I think there is a whole way of experience the shop differently. I mean, it happens so often that you go in a shop, you're looking for something, you can't find it, or you're looking for an advice, and you can't find anyone in the shop who could frankly help you. And I think a lot of it will be digitally enabled more and more. You will have a chatbot you can ask straight on the shelf. We'll have ChatGPT answering you and saying, sure, the way you should do it, if you have to repair this thing, you might want to take this type of glue and maybe buy this product as well on top, and that's it. It's fixed. And if you want a video on how to do it, here's the YouTube link. I send it to your phone. And I think these are scenarios that will happen. That will happen.
We will have to review that actually. I mean, it's gonna change so quick. I feel like with the explosion of AI, that I think we're just seeing like the beginning of an exponential curve. I think we're off to quite a big change. Hey, well, Christian, really good to have you on this. Finally, I have to say, after all this time, one last question from me, which actually is a question that I learn a lot from, and we ask all our guests. Looking at the beginning of your career, when you started in finance right out of university, if you were like knowing what you know now after all these years of experience, if you have to give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I feel lucky in my career because I kind of naturally was transferred from one type of role to another, and I kept on learning. But I think you have to do that in a lot more proactive way. You have to understand that the world is changing, and learning a job today doesn't mean that the job will still be relevant in 2-3 years, and you have to watch what is happening around and keep on learning, keep on evolving. When I learned marketing in Nestlé in late 90s, early 2000, what I learned is completely irrelevant to how marketing is run nowadays, right? It was all about brand positioning and positioning statements and being the best and creating the best TV advertising. And this is not the game nowadays anymore. It's all about digital. It's all about data. It's all about centering everything you do around the consumer and hitting the right chord and being personalized and understanding your consumers in a much different way than what we used to do 10 years ago.
This was Christian von Alten from Microsoft. Peter, I hope you enjoyed your time on the FMCG Guys. What are your conclusions from this conversation?
Wow, what a great conversation with an industry luminary like Christian, who's taken his career from finance into e-commerce, now fully into data, digital AI, and still working in the space, but doing so from different perspectives. I was so impressed with a number of things. One, just the fact that this is becoming increasingly the mechanism that will enable companies like Nestlé or any other FMCG company to make better decisions in marketing, in manufacturing, in logistics, in supply chain, in finance. All of this just says that data, AI, they are a core component of success, and companies need to have strategic plans around this to enable their success and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about like just segmentation, for example, of consumers, no, it's like a no-brainer, really, right?
If only I'd thought of that years ago when I was at dunnhumby. No, it absolutely, I kid. But I mean, what they're saying is that vision of taking big data, being able to use all these data sources to create meaningful and, more important, addressable audiences. Because at the end of the day, if creating a segment, but not being able to address that segment, communicate with that segment, incentivize that segment through whatever the mechanism is that we described. If you can't do that, then this effort is really just academic. It's a lot of expense for not necessarily a lot of return. But the minute you can start creating addressable audiences in physical stores, on websites, off-site through partnerships, all of this data comes to life. That's where you see scalable, meaningful growth.
Yeah. Is it me, Peter? You know better this data than me, but is it true that there's still a lack of a clear playbook on how to really take all this data and put it in the right place in the right time?
I think Christian hit on something really important in his last comments, which were, you need to start with what are the outcomes you're looking for. It's so easy to go find a myriad of data sources. And if you start with, let's go get a lot of data, what you end up doing is boiling the ocean. And that never produces an efficient outcome. If you start with, what is it I am trying to solve for? What am I trying to do? That will help you discern what are the data sources you need to power the achievement of that outcome. That will deliver to you the results in a much more efficient way. If you're boiling the ocean, you're wasting a lot of time. There are a lot of people who love doing that. They're fascinated by it, but it doesn't produce the results. And quickly companies will come to learn that that's just a waste of resources.
Mm-hmm. By the way, pretty impressive that Christian is so savvy about data, given that his background is so different, right? And I think that that's something that was pretty amazing. The fact that he's done finance, commercial, marketing, and now more like the data cloud. I mean, effectively what he's done is he's bulletproof this profile. He's the someone that will always be an asset to a company, really.
I agree. I think if you want to succeed, and the people that make the best leaders in the e-commerce space are not necessarily people who just came up through digital.
Yeah.
They have that brick and mortar background, the fundamentals of finance, the fundamentals of logistics and supply chain, and they've upskilled their capabilities the way that Christian has. It makes them a very powerful voice in driving success at Microsoft and for Microsoft's clients like Nestlé.
Yeah. And he didn't mention it, by the way, but he actually worked in Asia. He lived in Singapore, and he also built an e-commerce platform for Nespresso or Dolce Gusto, one of them, in the US. So quite impressive.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, Peter, thanks a mil for co-hosting this show with me. It was I had so much fun. So I look forward to more. Hopefully at Shop Talk, we'll get an opportunity or two to record, or three to record together.
It'll be great. We'll be very happy to welcome you over stateside to Las Vegas. Looking forward to it, David.
Very excited, very excited. Well, thanks to our audience as well for listening. I'm sure you really enjoyed the show. And now I can say it in person, by the way. Thanks to the CPG guys as well for your ongoing support and inspiration. Remember to follow them as well as us on LinkedIn and subscribe to both our podcasts, because I think you'll get a huge return on investment. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.